Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Real Football Talk. I'm your host Hassan. I have Steve and Adi with me. We'll be discussing Tottenham kind of missing the opportunity to go fourth on the table and into the Champions League spot. Adi, what was your take on the first goal and the amount of errors leading to it, really, from Spurs?
Yeah, I mean, just if I just give big comments about the first half in general, I thought the whole game in general was it was just like a game that both teams, it felt like both teams weren't playing for anything. It's just attack versus attack. I mean, the defending on both teams was the whole game. It just felt like whenever each team put a few passes together, they're going to create a chance. It was a real open game, surprisingly, for teams that are in precarious. I mean, Newcastle's in a precarious position. Tottenham's chasing that Champions League spot. It was quite very open. I was really surprised that I thought it'd be a bit more of a tactical affair, a bit more, nervy. But this was such an open game, and the first goal highlighted it. I mean, I thought the defending of both teams was terrible the whole game. Other than Roden from Tottenham, it felt like those defenders never defended before in everything. That it was so lax. Everything was lax. Positioning was always poor. It was just strange, and it was the same on the Newcastle end. I mean, it's like other than Lascelles, it felt like no one knew how to defend in that back line. They're pressing at the wrong time. They're tackling. They're not moving. Like all the basics and the foundations of defending just wasn't there. So first goal, you have to praise Richie. You know, he intercepts twice. The clearances, and that's what they were. I mean, that's the other thing is that Tottenham were doing this the whole first half, where they're playing it out from the back and then hoofing the long ball over the top anyway. Not whole first half, but they're doing it quite a few times. When they did get it into the midfield, into Højbjerg, they were splitting Newcastle open for fun. But when they played it out from the back, it was strange how every time it'd go to Tangana, it'd go over the top. He'll just clear it over the top. So Richie read it twice. And the main thing about Joelinton's first goal is the weight of pass from Longstaff. I think Joelinton would have missed that shot if he played it to his feet. Because he played it right in front of him, he had no choice but to take the shot before the defender slid in. And I think that actually helped Joelinton, because I've seen Joelinton, as soon as you give him time to think about what he has to do, he will mess the shot up. He'll cut in, he'll go on to his other foot and try and do something. And he did that with the other opportunities in the game. So I think the main thing was Longstaff pass, and the weight of it was perfect for first-time shots.
Kind of made the decision for him, it seems like.
Yeah. But I thought the whole game, Sanchez, Reguilon, and Tangana were poor. I mean, they were so lax the whole game. Reguilon just didn't want to defend today. He was playing so attacking, and Tangana was pushing up. He was doing that half thing of he's playing like a wing back, but he's meant to be a full back. You know, he's meant to be right back, and he's not. And so he's leaving Sanchez exposed. Sanchez is following the ball wherever. Just the positioning was terrible.
I mean, Steve, how frustrating must it be? I mean, knowing a guy, Joelinton, who just doesn't score, doesn't do anything, for him to really score.
He's an awful player. You know, he's an awful player, and Tottenham have made him look like he knows what he's doing today. And he's not someone that normally threatens. And even at, being, I don't know, 6 foot plus up against shorter defenders, normally the shorter defenders are able just to use their body to kind of put him off balance or anything. But we just didn't look like Tottenham knew how to defend that kind of danger. As Adil said, the first goal was just diabolical. You have 2 opportunities. So the first opportunity to play it gets cleared, and the second opportunity, okay, you think, right, well, you've been put under pressure. They're trying to press you, play long, and you can't beat that first press with that cleared pass. It was just absolutely shocking. You know, and as like Joe said, I think the weight of pass helps really, because if Joelinton has time to think about what he's going to do, invariably he's going to miss. You know, but he didn't have an opportunity, and yeah, I think fair play to Newcastle. I mean, if you take the game as a whole, Newcastle I felt deserved it. If we go on to talk about the second half, which I'm sure we will in a bit, you know, I thought they dominated. Joelinton, interestingly, was involved in the second goal for them. You know, again, suddenly he's gone from looking like, you know, Joelinton who can't play, to someone like, I don't know, Drogba or Ibrahimovic, you know, in terms of impact in a game. He's just like, this player's not a good player, but yet still Tottenham have made him look like that he's got ability, which is like, I think it's a shame for him.
Rodon was the only defender who positionally looked like he knew what he was doing, but the thing was, he's too weak. So Joelinton was winning everything in the air, every physical battle, he was winning it, because Rodon just didn't have it. And everyone, all the other defenders just didn't want to do their jobs today. I don't know where their mind was. They just didn't want to defend. Sanchez, the whole game was out of position. And if it wasn't for Rodon, I think Newcastle would have had more clear-cut chances.
He had a period where he made a mistake. I can't remember what the initial mistake was, but he made a mistake. And after making that first mistake, he had a period of about 5 minutes where every time he got near the ball or touched the ball, he made a mistake. Now, this, you know, there's a lot of talk about Mourinho and the way that he manages his team, and there's an interview that Demba Ba gave a few weeks back where he talks about Mourinho talking about mistakes and the worst scenarios that can happen. And it's clear that as soon as Sanchez made that mistake, he was then playing on fear. You know, he was playing in fear of the fact that he'd made a mistake and not wanting to make any more mistakes, and what could happen as a result of making those mistakes, and then just continued to make more mistakes because he was no longer relaxed in the game. So, yeah, you know.
Do you think that's due to Mourinho, as in the fear factor from him?
I think it is. I think it's not. I wouldn't say that I don't say that he'd sent a team out to play that way, but I do say that what I do say is that the way he has got them mentally prepared, that mistakes are massive, and you know, if you make a mistake, it's going to be costly and all that sort of stuff. And then if you're playing in fear, you know, I think it impacts. It definitely impacts your game and how you play. You know, so yeah, I think like you could kind of see like that Newcastle would get a goal from a mistake. You know, even the second goal was a mistake on, like, you know, defensively. Both Sanchez and Rodon got in each other's way and allowing the ball to fall free to Willock. So
I mean, before the goal, Newcastle had a couple of gilted chances. I mean, the chances Gale had. I mean,
yes,
it just was such an open game. It felt like both teams were just going for one of those classic 4-3 games where both teams are just interested in attacking and not a lot of defending. But the thing, just to come back on the Mourinho point, is even when you watch the All or Nothing show, he really does emphasize on the off the ball work a lot. And if you look at the teams he's been successful with, he's been successful with teams with experienced players everywhere. I mean, that's that. And when you focus on off the ball work and not making mistakes, well, which players don't do that? It's experienced players. Yeah. You know, and so I think his profile of what works for him with squads and the teams that he's been successful with is the core being very experienced, maybe slightly limited, and then he just gives the freedom and the license to the attacking players to play on their own instincts and create goals. He doesn't really give a template out, but
exactly. But all the experience was further up the pitch. Apart from the goalkeeper, you know, you've got Poipio, who's actually, even though he's quite experienced, is relatively young, and Ndombele, you know, that. But the more experienced players, I mean, I don't know how old Sanchez is, but you had Tanganga, who's 20, you know, Reguilon, who's 21, I think, maybe, like, you know, and then you've got Rodon and Sanchez in the middle, and they're not. That's not an experienced backline at all, you know. And
but Sanchez been there for about 3-4 years. So
yes, but he hasn't been the regular. He hasn't been the regular in the side. He, you know, in that 3 to 4 years, if he'd been the one that had been playing every week, or you know, when he came in, the first season he came in, he played like virtually every game, and it looked like he was going to be the player for the future. Then the next couple of seasons, he was in and out of the squad, and he wasn't playing many games. He was making a lot of mistakes, and he started to look a lot less like the player he did in the first season. Nervous, maybe, you know, his confidence took a knock or a battering from the fact that he'd gone from playing virtually every game to no longer being that regular and being the one that was shown that they could be relied upon. But he's played a few games recently, so you kind of thought that he got that confidence back. But I think the last game before the international break, he looked a bit nervous again. And again, today he looks a bit nervous. I don't know if that's just because Rodon's alongside him, and before he had Toby alongside him, and that makes a difference.
I think he looked good when he had Toby next to him. He's better when he has an experienced defender who's doing the talking and the organising. Because
yes, exactly.
Obviously, if he's at the back, then we know Lloris is a quiet leader.
He's not. He's not. That's a rumor. He's not. Okay. It's a rumor. We've had you should be able to. I think if you're certainly now in the games that are going on now, if you watch the games without the fake crowd noise,
artificial crowd noise,
you'll hear that Lloris isn't quiet at all. He's very talkative, very dominant in terms of how he tries to control his defence. But the control needs to come from the player alongside Sanchez rather than him in behind, because he will talk, but the talking from a goalkeeper is really going to be just about what decisions to make, whether to get up, whether to drop back, whether to get rid of the ball, or whether it's the keeper's ball. That's the only kind of decisions you're really going to get from a keeper, but you're not going to get the decisions about squeezing tighter together or
organising,
shuffling across, looking at like how to control the line and whether to step up and when to drop off a bit. You're not going to get that from the keeper, but you'll get the overall picture from a keeper's perspective, and it's not quiet from that perspective.
So I think that organisation responsibility has gone on to Sanchez, and maybe that's what's affected his confidence, because he's just not.
But this is the thing I was gonna say, Adu, is they did have Dyer on the bench, who I mean, Jose Mourinho started at the beginning for every single game, and they were really good defensively, winning many games.
So again, it was alongside Toby, I think.
And again, it's that same thing. The reason why Sanchez maybe capitulated after all the making a few mistakes is because that's the culture. As in, you make mistakes, you get out of the team. So Dyer made a few mistakes in big games, key games, and then he was out of the team. And obviously he was learned for a long time, but eventually it's turned. You can see it's turned where anyone who makes a mistake, it's like now, so it doesn't matter what you did previous weeks, because when Tottenham started to go on a run.
I disagree with that though, because Dyer was making mistakes consistently for a long period of time. He was in the side and still making mistakes. And when asked about his performance, he said he thought he was having a reasonable season. No different, like really, to many more of the team. But his actual mistake ratio was massive, and he was still getting the loyalty, I think, of Mourinho. And I think it got to a point where it had to change. And I think Mourinho actually, as much as I'm not saying I'm not a Mourinho fan, but he's the manager, so I'll support him there. But he gave him support that longer than he would give a lot of the other players in the team. So I think Dyer had a lot more favour than other players.
Definitely. I think Dyer was a slight exception in the sense that he was one of the leaders, so he was given more chances. But even when they were on that run, and they started to look like they're going to play nice attacking football. It's literally just one bad result, and he's gone back to dropping Bale and everyone. It's like all the positives from the previous weeks has completely been discarded. And obviously, I think just players are, like you said, you could tell there is a bit of fear about making mistakes amongst players.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. You can't understand why, when the team looked like they were performing really well, Bale suddenly looked like he'd rediscovered the appetite, the ability, and like as you say, one bad performance, and it was a shocking performance, but it was like a whole team performance. It wasn't an individual performance, but all of a sudden he said, right, well, I'm going to drop Bale. I'm going to bring, and to be fair to Vinicius, I think when Vinicius came in, prior to that game, he'd got 8 goals from eight starts, and when he came in, he got 9 goals from 9 starts. So it was kind of justified, or you think there's a justification behind it, or you can make a justification for it. But the balance in behind Kane was such that it's like, well, why would you not play?
A lot of those goals in the Europa Cup against, teams that were like, Eastern European teams that just are of that caliber.
But he did it against Aston Villa. So he came in, did it against Aston Villa. You can only beat the teams that you beat the opposition that you're up against. You can only score against those that you're up against. And could he do it in the Premier League? They put him in a Premier League game and he scored in the Premier League. So it's like, well, okay, and the goals that he's scoring, they're not, they weren't 15, 30-yard, like
the strikers' goals.
The strikes, they're exactly, they're strikers' goals. Sniffing out goals and being in the right place at the right time, and that's exactly what you want from a striker.
And the other thing, he was getting lots of assists as well, not just goals. He was getting quite a few assists.
Initially, yes.
Yeah, but just maybe going off track slightly, I just wanted to ask, what did you think of his performance the last few games when he started? Because for me, it's really frustrating how often he's offside. It's like a lot of them are obviously they're obvious offside, and he still carries on running offside. It's just how often he's offside. I find it hard to believe.
Is that down to is that down to him, or is that down to the players around him? So you'll expect the striker to make a run, and as you say, sometimes it's like, well, you're offside, don't make the run. But there's a lot of times where actually, as a striker, if you make a run, you're offside. If they don't receive the ball, they might receive the ball in the second phase. So it's down to the players that are on the ball to recognise the fact that he's made a run, he's offside, and can we play the ball somewhere else? Because I think there was a goal that was scored yesterday when the player was offside from the initial run. I can't remember the game, but he was offside from the initial run, and as the ball is played out wide, he just basically holds his position. The player receives it beyond him, goes beyond him a bit further, and then plays it back in. And he never got behind the defenders. He was always ahead of the defenders. But because the ball was played into a wider area, and his
other person was onside,
was onside. He then played it square, and he was able to roll it into the net. So, I think I agree. It's frustrating that he's offside quite a lot, but it's kind of 6 to 1 and half a dozen of the other, where you look for your teammates to recognise, look, he's in an offside position, don't play him in. Well, someone else needs to make a run to make that.
There's a lot of dribblers in that Tottenham team. I think that's what it is. So they always dribble probably longer than he's anticipating before they send the pass, because you got Ndombele who's going to dribble and commit. You got Moura who's going to dribble and commit. You got Lamela. So maybe that's Lo Celso as well. So maybe that's the reason why the timing just aren't there, because he hasn't understood that these players are going to commit the player before they send. But it is frustrating because they're good runs. They're really good runs, and if the timings are right, he's clean through, and you can see he's got a good finish on him.
Yeah, exactly, and that was the case with that chance today where Kane played him in. He's made the run, and he finished expertly. But again, as you say, it was that run was slightly too early. And in that instance, you kind of think like the pass from Kane is really the pass that you want. You know, you want him to play him in behind, and it's all of that's really about timing. So sometimes, like obviously, like Adil, you'll know about that, but rather than having a straight run, it should be like if he could make a curved run, that curved run might be enough to keep him onside, you know, rather than just making I want a straight run in behind. Can I curve my run, get across the angle for the pass, and then then hopefully that gives me an opportunity to time my run better. And maybe that's part of his problem. So what he will do, and what I've seen him do, and I see a lot of, I think I've seen Moura do this as well, is they'll be offside, they'll come back, curve their run, but they curve their run starting from an offside position, so they never actually got back onside. You know, so the curve run is ineffective because you never actually got back into a position to say, well, look, I'm onside, play me in, and here we go. So that kind of thing, that part of it is really frustrating. I agree, yeah, no, for sure. And that's something maybe that he's needing to learn. This is a faster league, you know.
I mean, I kind of wanted to focus on Harry Kane because there's been a lot of talk of him being linked to, I don't know, City looking for a new striker, etc. I mean, at the moment, it seems like he's kind of keeping Tottenham going, even though he scored 2 and they're challenging for the Champions League spot by again struggling. Where does it leave him? And like, if they don't finish in the Champions League spot, is he going to stay? Is he going to go? What do you think, Steve?
I think he'll stay, but and there's a lot of if you listen to a lot of Spurs fans, they say, well, you can't begrudge him from wanting to leave if Tottenham don't achieve success or they don't get top 4, they're not in the Champions League, don't win the Carabao Cup. But if you look at the opportunity he had today when it was 2-1, there was a couple of times, and Lamela breaks through, and the weakness is, with Lamela because he's purely one-footed. So he's so left-footed he can't adapt and do anything. And he stops, checks back, then plays Kane in. The way Kane receives the ball, he's fronted up against a couple of defenders, but Lamela continues his run. Now that leaves Lamela free in the middle of the box. If Kane squares the ball to him or tries to play the ball to him there, it's a relatively easy pass, then that should be an opportunity for Lamela to take a shot at goal, clear in front of the goal, whereas Kane has taken the shot on, hit the post, gone out. And then 50 seconds later, Newcastle go down, their friend and score. So, it's about those decisions. He's just as culpable as, he's a great player, probably one of the best in the world at the moment. But those decisions in and around the box, Messi doesn't make that decision. Messi assesses the options and thinks, well, actually, do you know what? I know he's like my holding midfielder, but he's plumb centre in the middle of the box. I've drawn 2 defenders towards me, right? I'm going to give it to him to have a shot at goal, And then if he misses the shot, then that's not Messi's fault. He's drawn the players. He's done as much as he can, And it's those type of things where there's been loads of opportunities for me where he's probably made the wrong decision that's probably cost us a point here and there, a goal here and there. And it's hard to be critical because he's dragged us through so many games and he is such a top player.
Isn't that the difference between a striker and a playmaker? I mean, the striker is, once they get the ball and they create the half a yard, they back themselves to score. And a playmaker will always look for the opportunity to play someone else in. I mean, because Messi's background is that he's always looking to get other players in and looking for them. But with Harry Kane, I'm sure a lot of the goals he scored is also because he's got that conviction of just, if he has half a yard, he can bury it and he'll back himself.
Yeah, no, for sure. Generally you'd think, right, well, that's the player that you want. If he's plumb in front of goal, then you kind of think, okay, I want him there, but he was wide of goal, and there he had support. So, look up. even if you look like you're going to play,
I'm sure he would have got a
might,
shout as well, Steve, from Lamella.
exactly.
Well, so.
But even if you look like you're going to take that option, that may make a defender make a different decision. You know what I mean? But if you always look like you're going to shoot.
I think part of the problem, he scored goals from that in that way, cutting in from that area. He's probably backed himself again when there was probably just sealing the result was more important at the time.
Yeah. Well, given that, like, Tottenham had been under the cosh the whole of the second half. I mean, from the first minute of the second half, Newcastle were on the front foot, and they stayed on the front foot the whole time. So, given that, you really need to take any opportunity you can to be clinical and increase that, increase that margin of of victory that you currently hold, because there was no way that game looked like it was going to end 2-1. It just didn't. Not with the way that Tottenham can't defend a lead. Like, they can't defend a single goal lead, so you can't hold on to a single goal. You've got to be more, attacking minded. Change the balance of the game somehow. And to give Mourinho his credit, he did. When Tottenham looked like they'd lost the balance of the game, he brought Lamella on. Lamella wrestled back some kind of momentum. You start to create a couple of chances, but you don't take those chances. So you don't take the chances, then you're liable to concede that sucker punch. So.
On what Steve said, Adi, how much credit does Newcastle deserve? Because this is a team who kind of, I think, won 2 games in the last 18. How much credit do they deserve in terms of the way they fought back and the way they dominated?
Definitely in terms of the character and the self-belief to come back. You have to, because that was devastating. The way the game just turned after they scored. I mean, straight from kickoff, the equalizer. A few minutes later, they take the lead. It's and this is a team that is struggling. You have to, give them credit. Second, the way in a half time, they got every reason to think, here we go again. But they came back, they rallied. But I think they were helped today. They were helped by this Tottenham team. I mean, Tottenham played so open, and the thing was, it's like both teams never had a midfield today. Both teams were so focused on the high press, but it was like reactive high pressing. They're pressing from the wrong position. They're pressing from so deep that press is not going to affect the player passing, because they're pressing from such a deep position. If you go closer to your man and then press, then you're actually affecting the game. You're affecting the decisions of the player. And Newcastle were definitely guilty of that, because they had players behind the ball. The difference is Newcastle had players behind the ball, but they weren't shielding anything. They weren't shielding any part. The amount of time Tottenham were just playing the ball straight through to Mora or Kane, or in that 10 position, whoever dropped off or whoever came in from out wide. Sometimes Lascelles would come. Højbjerg was just passing it straight in every time. And I'm thinking, what is the point of having 3 men in midfield and no one actually shielded? And the reason was because they were so possessed on pressing. But you're starting from a deep position, so it kind of becomes, there's no point of it, because you're doing it from a deep base. By the time you reach there, the pass is on anyway. You can't affect the guy on the ball. And Tottenham, and with Tottenham, they pressed in the right way, but it was so like, even Højbjerg was going today, so there was no protection for the centre backs of Tottenham. So maybe it's a bit too aggressive from Tottenham. They were doing it the right way, they're pressing, they're closer to their man. But this ain't a Newcastle team that's looking to play through the middle. They're going over the top straight away. So kind of needed someone shielding and protecting, winning those second balls, so that the defenders can go a bit more aggressive and attack the balls in the air a bit more. And then Tangana's positioning, I mean, the amount of times Newcastle just played the ball in behind Tangana, and Joelinton or Gale were able to get onto the ball and move Sanchez about. It was just too easy in the first half, especially. It's just, why don't you just stay in line with your defense and cut that pass out? If you're not going to press, then don't do neither. Don't be in a position where you're leaving the ball in behind, and you're not even affecting the guy. So both teams, yeah. I mean, Newcastle, they kept going. I thought Tottenham helped them. When the game started, before any of the goals happened, I was thinking this is suicidal from Newcastle, because if both teams are playing open, then you're gonna back Kane, Moura, Vinicius, them to punish. In an open game, you'd expect the extra quality, top-end quality of Tottenham to finish them off. So when he went to 2-1, I wasn't surprised, and I actually thought that's it, game done, because both teams are just playing open. And I thought Tottenham might become a bit more secure and play a bit more solid, but they carried on playing quite open. And as long as you don't put your chances away, then the nerves kicks in. The nerves kicks in that, hold on, we're not playing well, we're not defending very well. We might end up conceding, and that gave belief to the Newcastle team to continue.
Do you agree with that in terms of Newcastle, Steve?
I think so. And certainly, that they were a bit too open in the first half, but the second half I thought they got a lot tighter to Tottenham. Certainly in the midfield, they didn't, and they seemed to they recognised, for example, that Tanganga was a threat. Not Tanganga, sorry, and Ndombele was a threat. And every time he looked to try and turn on the ball, they had a couple of players near him to try and knock him off the ball, win the ball off him. And the same with Lo Celso as well. Excuse me, two players that would get Tottenham playing forward. They managed to get players close to. In the first half, actually, Tottenham were doing that quite well. They were getting players in and around Newcastle on the ball, and pressing, as Jill said, to win it back, which sometimes worked. But as Jill said, with Newcastle looking to go long, it meant that Tottenham were exposed defensively. And in the second half, they clamped down on that and were able to win back possession Newcastle a lot quicker and keep the pressure on Tottenham in their own half. And Tottenham were unable to get out, and you could, it was relentless really, and you could see that they were going to capitalise in it. And they've got the mismatches. They've got Joelinton working the channels and moving, not staying central, but looking at the overloads in the wide areas and being up against Reguilon, and understanding that obviously that he had the physical mismatch there, and that enabled them just to load crosses in for him, and then to try and get onto the knockdowns.
Thank you, guys. I mean, fantastic point for Steve Bruce and his team. Probably much needed for them, and shame on Tottenham's side, who could have gone into the Champions League, as we said. Thank you both for coming on. I look forward to seeing you both soon. Thank you, guys.